When you walk away from something that once held your heart, something strange happens. The moment you stop waiting, stop hoping, stop looking back, you ignite a force that transcends the relationship itself. The person you left behind may think they've moved on, but in reality, something shifts within them, something that cannot be easily undone. Absence reveals a profound truth. When you no longer need them, when you've decided to grow without their validation, it forces them to confront the gravity of what they've lost. The truth is, the universe works in ways that are often beyond our understanding. But each challenge, each heartbreak serves as a catalyst for transformation, both for you and for those who once had a part in your story. So ask yourself, as they can't get you off their mind, what does this reveal about your own journey and the strength you've found in your own absence? Loss is a powerful psychological trigger. When something valuable slips through our fingers, the human mind doesn't just register it as a simple event. It fixates on it, obsesses over it, and attempts to make sense of it. And in the context of relationships, this effect is magnified. A man may not realize what he had when he had it, but the moment he loses it, when you walk away, when you no longer exist in his daily reality, his mind begins to work against him. He starts seeing you everywhere, not because you're present, but because your absence is loud. The brain has a way of distorting memories when faced with regret. What once felt ordinary suddenly becomes extraordinary. He begins to remember the small things, the way you used to laugh at his jokes, the way you showed up for him when no one else did, the way your presence created a sense of stability in his life. These memories, once overlooked, now take on new meaning. And this isn't just sentimentality, it's psychology. When we lose something of value, we magnify its importance. We begin to view it through a different lens, one that filters out the imperfections and highlights only what was good. This is why people often regret the things they let go far more than the things they held onto for too long. But it's not just about memory, it's about contrast. Absence forces contrast. When you're no longer there, he's left comparing what once was to what is now. And if his present reality lacks the depth, the warmth, the security that your presence once provided, he will feel the void deeply. This is why time doesn't always heal. It often intensifies. Because the more he experiences life without you, the more he realizes that what he had was not as common as he once thought. And here's the crucial part. This realization does not happen when you're still in his life, hoping he will notice. It happens when you remove yourself completely. The reason for this is simple. Human nature resists anything that feels too available. When something is constantly in front of us, we assume it will always be there. We take it for granted because we do not perceive a risk of losing it. But when it's gone, truly gone, it forces an internal reckoning. It forces a man to confront his own emotions without distraction, without reassurance, without the safety net of your presence. And that confrontation is often far more powerful than anything you could have said or done while still in his life. This is why walking away with dignity is so powerful. Not out of manipulation, not as a game, but as a genuine decision to value yourself. Because in doing so, you force the world and the people in it to reassess your worth. And if he was ever truly connected to you, if you mattered beyond mere convenience, he will wrestle with it and lead to richer happiness. He will wrestle with it. And in that wrestling, he will come to terms with something he may have ignored all along, that losing you wasn't just losing a person, it was losing a part of himself. Some lessons in life can only be learned in hindsight, and sometimes the greatest realization a man can have is that he let go of something irreplaceable. Charlie Roberts. Attraction and desire are not static forces. They exist in a delicate balance of familiarity and mystery, of presence and absence. When you were in his life, he had the privilege of access. He could reach out, hear your voice, and experience your presence whenever he wanted. But human nature is predictable in its paradox. We crave what is just out of reach, and we take for granted what is readily available. Your absence disrupts that dynamic, forcing him to confront a reality he never considered. The certainty of you was an illusion. The moment you remove yourself from his world, the space you occupied becomes glaringly empty. It is in that space that desire is rekindled, not because he suddenly changed, but because his perception has. We do not long for what we already possess. We long for what we fear we may never have again. And this is why your absence lingers in his mind. It creates a vacuum that his thoughts naturally fill with curiosity, regret, and unresolved emotions. There's a psychological phenomenon called the Zeigarnik effect, which suggests that the human brain fixates on unfinished business. When something lacks closure, it remains mentally active, playing on repeat in the background of our consciousness. Your departure, if done with grace and finality, becomes one of those unfinished stories in his mind. He starts replaying past conversations, analyzing what went wrong, questioning his own decisions. He begins to wonder, did she care? Did I misjudge her? Did I underestimate what she meant to me? These thoughts are not fleeting, they linger because they lack resolution. This is where absence becomes more powerful than presence. When you were there, he had all the answers. He knew your love, your devotion, your patience, but now he is left with questions. And questions, when tied to emotion, are persistent. They infiltrate his thoughts when he least expects them, when he's driving, when he's lying in bed at night, when he sees something that reminds him of you. These moments, once insignificant, now carry weight. The coffee shop where you used to meet, the song you once played in the car, the way his phone used to light up with your messages. This is why moving on is not just an act of self-respect, it's an act of transformation. You shift the power dynamic from certainty to uncertainty. And it's not about control or manipulation, it's about human nature. When something feels lost, we assign it a value that we never did before. When something is truly gone, we finally recognize what it meant to us. And so, to attempt to get back the thing you lost, the reality is most people do not appreciate what they have until it becomes a memory. And when you walk away with dignity, without begging, without trying to explain, without waiting for him to catch up, he is left to wrestle with those memories alone. That is the moment he begins to feel your absence, not as a passing thought, but as a presence in itself. There's something deeply unsettling about realizing that someone you once had access to, someone who cared, who was present, has now moved beyond your reach. Human psychology is wired in such a way that we tend to ignore what is constant, dismiss what is reliable, and only begin to appreciate something fully once the possibility of losing it becomes real. And this is exactly what happens when you move on, when you truly move on. It's not just your absence that lingers in his mind, it's the unmistakable shift in energy. He doesn't just notice that you're not there, he feels it. There is a difference between a person who is waiting in the background and a person who has completely let go. The first creates a sense of security, a feeling that he can always return if he chooses to. The second, however, is unsettling because it forces him to confront a new and uncomfortable truth. You are no longer his to return to. This is where the power of silence becomes undeniable. When you stop reaching out, when you stop explaining, when you stop hoping he'll come to his senses, something profound happens. It's as if a mirror is held up to him, reflecting back his own choices. He begins to realize that he isn't just missing you, he is missing the version of himself that we often think that love is what makes us hold on, but sometimes love is what gives us the strength to let go, and when you do, you disrupt the pattern. He was used to your presence, to the reassurance that no matter what, you were still there in some capacity. Now that security is gone. And in its place is a space he doesn't know how to fill. The weight of regret is a slow and heavy burden. At first it creeps in subtly, little reminders of the past, small flashes of what was. But over time, as he realizes that you are no longer waiting, no longer hoping, no longer affected by him in the same way, something shifts. What once felt like a choice now feels like a mistake. What once felt like certainty now feels like loss. It is in that silence, in that absence, that he is left alone with his thoughts. And perhaps for the first time, he is forced to ask himself the questions he had been avoiding all along. Did I take her for granted? Did I assume she would always be there? And most painfully, did I let go of something I was never meant to lose? And that is the moment you truly become unforgettable. Not because you played a game, not because you manipulated the situation, but because you had the strength to walk away, to reclaim your own worth, to move forward without looking back. And in doing so, you forced him to see what he was too blind to recognize when you were still standing right in front of him. There's something about the finality of a closed door that forces a person to rethink everything. When you were still there, when he still had access to your presence, your warmth, your energy, he may not have fully grasped what he had. But the human mind works in strange and paradoxical ways. It often fails to appreciate what is readily available and only begins to understand its true value once it is gone. This is the nature of scarcity. It's not just an economic principle, it's a psychological one. People crave what they can't have. And when something once abundant becomes rare, it gains significance. When you move on, when you step out of his reach, you become scarce. And in that scarcity, you become valuable in a way you never were before. But here's the important part. This only happens when you truly move on. If your absence is merely a performance, if deep down you are still hoping he will reach out, still checking your phone, still measuring his reaction, then you are not truly absent, and he will sense that. But if you have truly detached, if you have found peace in your own path, if you no longer need him to notice your absence, then that is precisely when he will. This is because true detachment creates a void, and nature abhors a vacuum. Your presence was once a source of comfort, stability, and even ego validation for him. It reassured him, whether consciously or unconsciously, that he was significant, that he had a place in your world. Now that source of reassurance is gone, and in its place is an unsettling emptiness. It's in this emptiness that his mind begins to turn. And it is in this space that he starts to realize something crucial. Your absence has changed him. He is no longer experiencing life in the same way because the presence that once added depth, color, and meaning is missing. He may not have understood the impact of your presence when you were still there, but he understands the impact of your absence now. And this realization, this slow, creeping awareness, is what makes him unable to let go. It's not just about missing you, it's about missing the version of himself that existed when he was with you. Perhaps he was more driven, more inspired, more at ease with himself. Perhaps he felt more understood, more challenged, more alive. And now, without you, something is missing, not just externally, but within him. It's a profound moment when someone realizes that what they lost was not just a person, but a part of themselves. And that is why, no matter how much time passes, no matter how much he tries to distract himself, your absence remains. Because it is not just about losing you, it is about losing the version of himself that he will never quite be able to replicate without you. And that is why you never chase. That is why you never try to remind him of what you brought to his life, because when you were there, he had the chance to see it for himself. If he didn't, that is his burden to carry, not yours. Human nature is fascinating in its contradictions. We want stability, yet we crave excitement. We seek comfort, but we are drawn to challenge, and nothing ignites this paradox more than the loss of something we once took for granted. When you move on, when you no longer seek his validation, you introduce an unfamiliar and unsettling force into his world, uncertainty. And uncertainty, whether we like it or not, is the foundation of emotional intensity. He was once secure in your presence. Whether he admitted it to himself or not, he knew deep down that you were there, available, interested, engaged. That certainty created comfort, but comfort breeds complacency. He didn't have to question your loyalty, didn't have to doubt his place in your life. And for many people, that level of certainty dulls their awareness. They stop paying attention. They stop appreciating. They assume that what is will always be. But then something changes. You step away, you no longer seek his attention, no longer react to his presence. You are no longer predictable. And suddenly he is left with a question he never had to ask before. What happened? That question is powerful. It lingers in the subconscious, feeding into the part of the mind that despises uncertainty. You see, people don't just want answers, they need them. The human brain is wired to seek patterns, to make sense of things. And when a pattern is disrupted, it creates tension, a cognitive dissonance that demands resolution. And this is where the emotional shift happens. Because now, instead of feeling secure in your presence, he feels destabilized by your absence. He starts replaying past moments, analyzing details he once overlooked, searching for clues to explain the shift. He remembers things you said, the way you looked at him, the way your energy felt when you were together. And in doing so, he is forced to engage with something he never fully confronted before, the reality of what he lost. The irony is that this intensity, this emotional weight, did not exist when he had you. It exists now because he no longer does. This is the paradox of human emotion. We don't always feel the depth of something until it is beyond our reach. And now his mind has turned you into something far more significant than you were when you were present. A mystery. And mystery is powerful. It fuels longing, it keeps thoughts cycling, it turns memories into something more vivid than reality ever was. When someone cannot place you in a neat, predictable box, you occupy space in their mind in a way that is not easily dismissed. This is why moving on is not just an act of personal growth, it is an act of transformation, not just for you, but for the person who once underestimated your value. Because now he is not just dealing with your absence, he is dealing with the realization that he never truly understood your worth until you stopped giving him the chance to take it for granted. And that is the lesson. People only learn to value what they can no longer possess. The question is, will you be the person who waits for them to catch up, or will you walk forward, knowing that your worth was never meant to be proven, only recognized? There's a strange irony in human nature. People often don't realize what truly matters to them until it's gone. Loss creates clarity, and absence has a way of intensifying emotions that presence never could. When you move on, when you step away from someone who once took you for granted, you create a void, and voids demand to be filled. But here's the truth. They can't fill that space with just anyone, because what lingers in their mind is not just the loss of a person, but the loss of something unique, something that cannot be easily replaced. Memory is not an objective recording of events. It is a reconstruction. And when you are no longer in his life, he reconstructs you not as you were, but as his mind needs you to be. In this way, absence does something profound. It transforms you into an ideal. The flaws that once seemed obvious fade into the background. The arguments, the misunderstandings, the reasons he may have looked past you before, all of that becomes secondary. What remains is the emotional imprint you left behind. And the mind, especially when wrestling with loss, has a tendency to exaggerate that imprint. Think about it. How often do we romanticize the past? How often do we remember things as being more beautiful, more intense, more significant than they actually were in the moment? This is the power of absence. It creates nostalgia, a longing for what once was, but is no longer accessible. And nostalgia is a powerful force. It is not just about missing a person. It is about missing who he was when he was with you. That's an entirely different kind of longing, one that is much harder to escape. Because when he sees you thriving without him, when he realizes that your life did not collapse in his absence, it challenges the narrative he may have told himself. Perhaps he thought you would always be there, waiting, hoping, seeking his attention. But now that assumption no longer holds, and when assumptions shatter, people are left with one thing: uncertainty. Their uncertainty creates emotional intensity. It forces people to ask questions they never asked before. Did I make the wrong choice? Did I underestimate what she meant to me? Will she ever come back? These questions are not easily dismissed. They linger, they fester, and the more they remain unanswered, the more they fuel an internal battle between pride and regret. The truth is, people often do not appreciate something until they are faced with the possibility of never experiencing it again. This is why moving on is such a powerful act. It not only liberates you, but it forces the other person to confront a reality they never considered before. The reality that you were never waiting for them to realize your worth. You knew it all along. And so the question remains, not for you, but for him. Will he allow his pride to keep him trapped in regret? Or will he finally understand that some losses are not just temporary, they are permanent? Here's how this concludes.